Welcome to the discussion starter video for Sunday, February the 9th. We're in our series 2020 Vision, looking to Jesus, and our desire is to see Jesus more clearly. This Sunday we were in Matthew chapter 21, verses 1 to 22, and talking about this idea of what are some of the obstacles that exist that might get in the way of us seeing Jesus clearly. Matthew 21 is broken into three main sections or three scenes, and they're all tied together with that question or this idea that there is an obstacle that's preventing the people who really should have known who Jesus was, who should have been able to see him clearly, but there was obstacles getting in the way of them seeing him clearly. And so the first scene is Matthew 21, verses 1 to 11. It's the Palm Sunday passage, and it's this sort of triumphal entry of Jesus entering Jerusalem as the king, and the people welcoming him as the king and celebrating him, even shouting out, "Hosanna," which means save us. The people there then ask the question, who is this, in verse 10? It's a great question that I would encourage you in your groups to talk about. But they're asking this question because, in a sense, they have some expectations around Jesus and who he is. And Jesus came as this Messiah figure, this kingly figure entering Jerusalem, and the people were hoping that he would bring political peace and prosperity. But that's not what Jesus came to do. He came to usher in a new kingdom, a different kind of kingdom, not the kind of kingdom the people were looking for. And so they had these false expectations. And a great question for you to discuss might be, what are some of the false expectations that we have of Jesus that might prevent us from seeing him clearly? The next scene, Jesus enters the temple, and he gets very upset. He starts overturning tables and confronting the religious leaders. And there's a lot that you can unpack in that passage, but the obstacle, the real obstacle that we see there is that the religious leaders were filling the temple with clutter or religious activity that was preventing people from an authentic experience with God. The temple was God's meeting place with his people. It was really the place where people went to have access to God. And the religious leaders were filling up the outer court, the court of the Gentiles, with all of this religious activity and clutter. And so Jesus starts overturning the tables and getting really upset with them. And really at the heart there is this idea that they were preventing the people from really experiencing God fully. And the next part of that passage, he goes on to heal people, and the children start proclaiming his praises. And so a great question to discuss out of that part of the passage might be, what's some of the clutter in our lives that gets in the way of us experiencing the full life of Jesus in us? And what clutter might need to be removed? Maybe there's religious clutter, religious activity even, that gets in the way of us experiencing the full life of Jesus. The third scene is another tricky one where Jesus is coming back into the city and he curses a fig tree, and that fig tree is representative of the nation of Israel, God's people who had just rejected Jesus. And so Jesus, in a sort of metaphorical way, is rejecting Israel and saying it's time for the mission of God to advance and go beyond the city of Jerusalem. And as the people have rejected him, he's rejecting them. And then his disciples start talking to him, and he says, but if you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. And it's this invitation to his disciples that you don't need to reject me. If you believe in who I am, if you see me clearly, you can experience the full life of Jesus in you. And so for us as followers of Jesus, we might ask, the obstacle there is this idea of rejecting or denying Jesus. Have we ever rejected him or denied him? And what would it look like to give him our full devotion in our mind and in our heart? So false expectations, religious clutter, denial and rejection. I would encourage you to talk about these as potential obstacles that might show up in our lives and how we might respond to these obstacles and remove them in order to experience the full life of Jesus in us and to see him more clearly. Blessings on you as you discuss these things with your groups.